Hey guys, this is Randy.
And I'm Daniel.
We're two musicians, and when we're not gigging, we like to talk games.
And today on Gaming Gig, we're talking about Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury.
Now, this is a game that, when it was announced, I'm not going to lie, I was pretty hyped about because I did not play Mario 3D World on the Wii U.
No, I didn't either, so I was excited to try it on Switch.
Yeah, and they made some quality of life updates, like increasing the speed of play. And I think that's something that was one of the big complaints I heard about that game. So, I knew that this was going to be a better experience, at least in that regard, on Switch.
Yeah, and I didn't play it back on Wii U either. That was back in 2013, and I wasn't really checking out the new Mario game back then. But I have played just a few levels of 3D Land on DS, and I did notice
it's on 3DS.
Is it 3D? Yeah, it's 3D.
3DS.
You're right, 3DS, 3D Land, 3DS makes sense. And I did notice that it plays pretty slow, so I wonder if it was kind of a similar deal.
Well, as far as I know, 3D World is kind of like a sequel of sorts to 3D Land. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and because of that, we can't really directly compare the movement speed, but I have heard that because of the speed of play being turned up just a little bit, it does probably increase the perception that the player has for the differences in the characters.
Right. Absolutely. So I'm sure that in the initial game, there may have been more of a difference between each character. Because one thing I did notice about the Switch port is that each of the characters, they didn't feel all that different to me in terms of speeds, even though I know that there is a difference. I just didn't really notice it.
I didn't notice it really in speed either. I did notice that Luigi feels floatier.
Right, yeah, I
which
did
is
notice
par
that.
for the course. Mm-hmm. And then I only played as Toad for just maybe one level, and he felt, similar to Mario to me, honestly. I know he's supposed to just be the fastest of the four.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he is, but it didn't seem like a huge difference.
Kind of like as you speed them up, the differences start to be lessened because, proportionally it would be less.
Yeah, maybe
that makes
so.
sense. Now, this is a game that I played with Catherine co-op, and we loved it. I mean, this was a great co-op experience, and it seems like it was really built with co-op in mind. Not that you can't enjoy it by yourself, because I think you absolutely can, but it's certainly co-op forward.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that back in the day on Wii U, the multiplayer was a big deal on 3D Land. The couch co-op, it being kind of equal parts, maybe helpful and equal parts chaotic. And I know you guys do that a lot, and I know you really enjoyed it. And in this game, they actually added the ability to play online multiplayer.
Right, that's really cool. We didn't do any of that, but I could totally see this being a great game to get. If you can get 4 people playing on it, I bet it is just, chaotic, but in a fun way.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be that good, warm, fuzzy kind of chaotic.
Yeah, I could totally see this being one that we, maybe we should get together and try to get a group of 4 together and play this because it would probably be fun.
Yeah. Also, back in the day on Wii U, obviously we had that gamepad.
Right.
The gamepad was kind of the rectangular shaped elephant in the room there, which I thought was really cool.
I loved it.
But it had some functionality on 3D World where you could blow in the mic and do various things.
Right, and they removed that for the Switch port, didn't they?
They removed it, yeah. So you could blow away enemies, you could reveal certain blocks, and you could also move platforms by blowing on them. And apparently in the Switch port, those platforms are just already in motion, is what I read.
Yeah, those things are already moving, or I don't know, they may have changed some stuff to where you could just touch it with the with the pointer controls, because there was some pointer control stuff in the Switch version that was kind of a holdover from the Wii U version. But I think you're right. I think they just kind of kept those things in motion instead of making you interact by blowing on it. And honestly, I'm cool with that because the mechanic where you blow into the mic, I've never loved that mechanic. I'm almost finished playing Spirit Tracks, and it has a lot of that in it, and it's just kind of annoying. It's not awful. It's not like it's the worst thing ever, but I don't really like the mechanic to begin with, so I'm totally cool with them taking that out for the Switch port.
Yeah, is it 3DS where if you're on the home screen and you blow on it, it moves or maybe that's Wii U, it moves some of the stuff at the home page, it rotates the icons or something. There's some sort of interactive blowing in the mic thing.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea. It's probably one. I mean, that sounds like something that would exist, but I've not heard of that.
Yeah, if anybody who's listening knows, let me know.
Yeah, let us know.
I don't know which system that is. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm glad they took that out. It just kind of seems gimmicky. All right, so another thing they added when they ported the game to Switch is amiibo support. And I don't know how big you are into amiibo. Did you do any of that?
No, I didn't do any. In fact, I've never done anything with amiibo. I don't own a single amiibo. It's one of those things that I haven't gotten into, mostly because I know I'm a collector, and I know if I get one, I'm gonna have 100. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I just haven't gone down that rabbit hole at all.
Well, I only have a few amiibo. I have a wolf amiibo that I use for Smash. And then I also recently got those Metroid Dread amiibo because I got that really good deal from Best Buy. But in 3D World and Bowser's Fury, they did release a Cat Mario and a Cat Peach. And apparently the Cat Mario gives you the White Cat Mario power-up, which is exactly like a regular Cat Mario, but you're invincible.
Right, I'm very familiar with that power-up because that's the power-up that you get if you... Actually, I don't know that it's...
Oh,
no.
If you die a lot or something, it will give that to you.
That's like the White Tanuki. So I guess that's different than the White Cat. I don't know that I guess White Cat is probably held behind the amiibo in terms of you have to have the amiibo to get that.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's just a Bowser's Fury thing as opposed to a 3D World thing. That I'm not sure of.
The White Cat power-up?
Yeah.
I wonder. That's interesting. I don't know. I didn't, like I said, I haven't done the amiibo stuff, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. And then Cat Peach will give you a random power-up.
Oh, just a random power-up. Okay, if you scan the Cat Peach.
And then those are the only two I think that were actually in the Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury series. But there's also a Bowser and Bowser Jr.
They have some functionality.
Yeah.
On their own.
Yeah, the Bowser amiibo, at least in Bowser's Fury, will summon Fury Bowser. Bowser Jr. will send out a shockwave that hurts enemies.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, I think amiibo stuff is really neat. And I think if I was wanting to collect some of those things, amiibo functionality is never something that is like game breaking or really that much of an advantage typically. So collecting amiibo is really more about collecting the amiibo than getting the power up, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you talked me into keeping my Metroid Dread amiibo in the box. So
I did, yeah.
It makes the most sense. I just wanted to touch it, you know?
So what about other amiibo figures besides the Bowser and Bowser Jr.? Was there any others that worked? I suppose like a regular Mario or Luigi amiibo would do something in the game, right?
Yeah, so any amiibo in the Mario series, but outside of the 3D World and Bowser's Fury set gives you a star power-up. And then any other amiibo you can find or might have gives you a 1-up mushroom.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nintendo's pretty good about that, including some sort of functionality for every amiibo, even if it has nothing to do with the game.
Right.
Yeah, and the only amiibo I can think of that really gave you any sort of huge game advantage is that Twilight Princess amiibo that lets you fast travel.
I'm sorry, not Twilight Princess.
No.
You mean a Skyward Sword.
Off my game.
Yeah, Skyward Sword. And and even that I don't think is as big of a deal as people made it out to be, because you don't really need the fast travel that much in that game unless you're really into trying to collect like potions and stuff. But really, that was not a big deal, and people made a way bigger deal out of it than it was. It really was a small quality of life update.
Yeah, just locked behind a little bit of a paywall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much covers amiibo. But how did you just feel about the game as a whole? I mean, how did you like 3D World specifically, not Bowser's Fury?
Well, it's a hybrid thing, isn't it? It's not really a 3D Mario game in that it's not the kind of open world thing we think about, but it's not really a 2D Mario game, but it feels more like a 2D game than a 3D game in a lot of ways, because it's very like linear in terms of the levels. You start at one place and it's all about reaching the end and getting there and hitting the flagpole. So that feels very 2D Mario, and it kind of evoked a lot of those nostalgia feeling by playing it, even though it was a newer Mario game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the formula of a 2D game with the mechanics and approach of a 3D game. It's kind of how it feels to me. It felt like a great marriage between those two styles.
Absolutely. And the only thing that was really lacking from a traditional 3D Mario game is there were no camera controls.
Couldn't you move the camera? I think you can move the camera a little in 3D World. You can't completely 360 control it, but you can, because I did that to find certain stars.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're all right about that.
And, you know, as far as it being reminiscent of those old 2D games, it reminded me so much of back in the day when I was a kid playing through Super Mario Bros. 2. Because you got to pick that same cast of people. At least the American Super Mario Bros. 2. You know, not talking lost levels here. But I really loved the way they approached that, but gave you that 3D experience.
Yeah, I think it was really cool, and I'm glad I got to play it, but I'm kind of sad that I missed out on it back in 2013. But at that time, I was neck deep in grad school or graduating from college, from undergrad. So I was not really into video games like I am now.
Yeah, I wasn't really playing anything that didn't say Bethesda and Fallout or Elder Scrolls.
Right, yeah. What did you think about the length of the game? It was a pretty short game to me.
It was a short game. It could be as short as you wanted it to be. I mean, if you wanted to play it as more of a completionist, you could do that. You could get all those stars and go on and do the extra levels. I know you guys worked on some of those extra levels, right?
We did. We actually kind of played the game as completionists in a way, in that we got all the, I guess they were stars, yeah, and each level had 3 stars, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we collected every single one of those for every level. So we really felt like we did everything in the game. And then we got to the end of the game, and there are some extra levels that are like extra difficult levels. And I'll tell you, those things were hard.
Yeah.
We tried them and played. We got through a couple of them, but then they got to the point where they really were just not a whole lot of fun for us because they were too hard. I'm sure for some people it was probably the perfect level of difficulty, and they may have thought the base game was way too easy. And I think the base game was easy, but that doesn't mean it wasn't fun, because I think it was a really fun level of, it's just a fun game to play. It doesn't have to be hard to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, Mario is kind of good at hitting that balance. Odyssey did that. Odyssey was one of my favorite games of all time, but it wasn't particularly hard until maybe you got to the end and you were working on Dark Side and Darker Side, which I did. But I have not done the extra levels on 3D World yet, so I'm going to go back and do those.
Well, they're very difficult, so prepare yourself.
Yeah. All right, so we've talked a lot about 3D World, but we haven't talked about the add-on to the game for the Switch port, which is Bowser's Fury. And I know we were both big fans, but what did you think about that? Let's get it started.
I loved Bowser's Fury. It was pretty much exactly what I hoped it would be, but I thought it was actually maybe better than I expected it, to be honest. I really liked that return to the more sandbox style Mario, and having the move set that was largely from 3D World seemed really natural. It didn't feel that off in terms of 3D Mario's. The moveset felt great.
Yeah, I mean, initially, I think I was expecting it to feel more like Odyssey, which is dumb because it's bundled with 3D World, not Odyssey. And it did kind of take that sandbox approach like Odyssey did, but like you said, it controlled and had the mechanics of 3D World, and it felt really good. I mean, to compare it to Odyssey is really just not a fair comparison because, for one, Odyssey feels amazing, but they're just not the same games. They're not meant to feel the same.
Right, and I don't want to make it seem like Bowser's Fury doesn't have good controls, because I think it really does have good controls, but maybe not as fluid as Odyssey, but they're still really good. It gave a unique feel to it, the game. It doesn't feel like any 3D Mario game that I'd played in the past, and I think for that reason, it felt fresh to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas I think if they had just taken the moveset directly from Odyssey, it would have kind of maybe left me a little more dissatisfied, because I would have really just wanted a sequel to Odyssey. And if they had done that, I think I would have been like, well, that was great, but it needs to be like way longer.
Yeah, I need to be better really at keeping my own expectations and bias out of how I feel when I go into a new game, because I am such a big Odyssey fan. But like you said, you can't hold that against Bowser's Fury, because it was great in its own way.
Right, and honestly, for an add-on game, I think this is really a pretty hefty game. It's about a few hours, 3 hours or something to finish to get the credits to roll. But if you want to do all 100 of the cat shines,
yeah,
it's going to take you about double that time. It's about a 6-hour game, which for an add-on game, dude, that's pretty hefty.
Yeah, and I mean, especially you combine that with the playtime you already put into 3D World, you're definitely getting your money's worth.
Right, yeah. And I think they needed to do that to charge full price for this game, which I think they did, right? I think this was a $60 game.
Oh yeah, it definitely was. And
it being an older game, if they didn't have this add-on, maybe they would have been able to charge $60, because they charged $60 for Skyward Sword. So
Well, they would have probably done it whether we wanted them to or not.
Right, but it's awesome that we got this Bowser's Fury, because personally, I loved just getting back into a 3D Mario, a more open sandbox style Mario, and I'm glad that we got this. No, it's not Odyssey 2, but still, it's something.
Yeah. So one of the unique mechanics about it was the whole Fury Bowser thing. Every so often, it would start to rain, the weather would change, and it would get all dark, and this enormous dark colored Bowser would pop up and start wrecking your stuff like, Godzilla style, basically. And I think that has some pros and cons. And I'm curious to see if you agree. So I thought it was good because there's all these Fury blocks scattered throughout the world, and you can't break them without Bowser. So, you kind of stay in a position so that Bowser's going to shoot fire at you and jump out of the way, hopefully, and it breaks these blocks. And generally they have cat shines in them. But one of the cons that I kept running into is I would be working on something that was a little tricky. I'd be really focused, and then all of a sudden it would start to rain. And I was like, oh man, this is about to completely interrupt my flow. And it happens pretty often.
It does.
So what was your experience with that?
Yeah, I definitely had a similar experience with that, and that it really did interrupt my flow lots of times. But it's just kind of part of this game's personality, and that I think it's supposed to. I think they want you to kind of dread when Fury Bowser comes around. And it's honestly, they did a great job with it because it is kind of scary. I mean, in terms of Mario stuff, you don't get much scarier than Fury Bowser.
Right.
You just don't. When it started raining, it wasn't just like, oh, my flow's going to get thrown off. It was like, man, I got to deal with this. And, there were often times where I didn't have anywhere to hide, or I couldn't get out of the way, and I would die because of Fury Bowser. I think it was intentionally kind of disruptive. Now, I don't know if that makes it a better game because of it, but I do think it was an intentional choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think they wanted it to have a certain element of occasionally planned chaos. And, one of the things you can do to get rid of Fury Bowser immediately is get a cat shine.
Right.
So if you're really close to getting a cat shine, there were actually times when I would notice, I'd be like, man, I haven't seen Fury Bowser in a hot minute, but I see a cat shine, and I just hang out for a minute or two and wait for him to pop up, and then I'd grab the cat shine so I didn't have to deal with him.
Yeah, I did the same thing. On a related note to this frustration thing, I played Bowser's Fury by myself when it was Catherine's turn to play the game, or when she went to play the game, I should say. I think she had a lot more frustrations with those types of mechanics. And I think it's because she doesn't play as many games, and those types of slowdowns and those disruptions kind of are more apt to throw her.
I'm surprised you guys didn't play that in co-op.
Well, you can play it co-op. You can play it where one person plays as Bowser Jr., but honestly, it was like little sibling role. You really didn't do a whole lot, and it wasn't a whole lot of fun.
I got you.
So, although they did add a co-op option to the game, it didn't feel great. We didn't like it. She didn't like playing as Bowser Jr., and I sure wouldn't have liked playing as Bowser Jr. So, it's almost like, let me think. I think it is in one game, I can't remember which Nintendo game it is. It might be Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. You can kind of be just like a helper that like points the cursor and kind of interacts with the world and maybe like disrupts enemies or uncovers coins. It was more like that, where you really weren't in the action. You were just kind of like helping a little bit.
Yeah, because it's not like Bowser Jr. can die or take damage or anything.
No, I mean, he could deal a little damage, but
yeah.
I think that the co-op mode was a little underbaked for my taste.
I got you. Yeah, as playing it solo, I had the setting on where Bowser Jr. would help you out like a medium amount or whatever the default one was.
I did that as well.
But by the end, I actually wished I had turned it down. I guess I could have. I just never did. Because there were times when a bomb would jump out and I'd be trying to like throw it at a block, and Bowser Jr. would come up and like swipe the bomb off this high area I was on, and I had to wait for another one to pop up, and I'd be like, come on, man, like I'm working on something here. Yeah,
little things like that are certainly annoying, but that probably didn't happen much, I bet.
No, it happened like 3 times, but it was 3 too many.
Yeah.
But no, it was not a big deal at all.
So we've talked about this a very small amount on the show already, but do you think that Bowser's Fury is kind of a placeholder so that we don't get upset that there's not more 3D Mario coming up soon? Do you think that this is something where they're giving us this and saying, hey, it's going to be a while until you get another 3D Mario?
I do, and I think they're putting themselves in a kind of a win-win situation here, because if they do bring out another 3D Mario in the semi-near future, then they get to say, oh, and you got Bowser's Fury, aren't we awesome? But if they don't bring one out, then they get to say, well, you got Bowser's Fury, and it was awesome.
I completely agree with you. 100%.
And it was awesome. I'm not trying to drench that in sarcasm. It really was a great game.
No, it's a great game. So, we got Odyssey it was in October of 2017, I think, is when Odyssey came out. So it's been, when did 3D World and Bowser's Fury come out? We're talking about it obviously late. We did not get to the party early. I want to say that it came out this year.
Yeah, so Bowser's Fury came out on February the 12th this year.
So we're looking at, about like almost 4 years since the previous Mario game. It's a relatively short time, but it's kind of like a medium amount of time between Mario games.
Right, yeah. I mean, we talked about this in a previous episode, how there's never really been there's not much of a precedent for a 3D Mario sequel, except for Galaxy and Galaxy 2. And so, yeah, it's been a medium long time.
There's a chance that it may be another 4 years until we get another 3D Mario.
I mean, it could certainly go that way. Thank God we're getting 3D Kirby.
And the 3D Kirby game does seem a little Odyssey-like.
Mm-hmm.
And if the 3D Kirby game even ends up being half of what Odyssey is, I think I'll be pretty excited about that.
Oh, I would too. And, we're kind of getting off the rails here, but, in Odyssey, you'd throw Cappy and you would take over that particular enemy's power or whatever. And that's kind of Kirby's mechanic as well, except he just, eats them or swallow them or whatever he does. So I wonder if it will play similar to Odyssey in certain ways.
I hope it does. Getting back on topic of Bowser's Fury, I just thought, what are your thoughts on the difficulty of Bowser's Fury? Did you find it to be easy, medium, difficult? What do you think?
I found one sequence so far that I thought was hard. There's a section where there's all these rotating blocks, and you have to continually climb higher and higher, and literally the level that you're working on is spinning in the air. So you have to continually make sure that you are jumping as it rotates so that you don't get dumped off. And then I also did that in the middle of a Fury Bowser sequence, so that was hard. But the rest of the game I didn't find particularly hard. Just kind of a wholesome, casual experience is how I would describe it.
Yeah, I agree with you. There were some tricky sequences, and now you've only gotten to the halfway point of the game. You did have the credits roll, but you did not continue on beyond that point yet.
Yeah. Just did it yesterday, so cut me some slack here.
Right. But I can say that there probably will be a couple more things that come up that are tricky. Now, what's really cool about this is that you really can get the shines in any order.
Mm-hmm.
These catch shines, there's not a set way you have to get them. The 50 you got, you could have run across some easier ones, or you could have run across all the hard ones already. But still, I like games that do that kind of let you play in any order, kind of collect things in any order that you would like. And this is open world, a true open world.
And it was kind of funny because I actually completed the game with 51 cat shines, because I knew I had to get 50 to beat the final Fury Bowser or whatever, or at least before the first credits rolled. So I did that, and then I waited for Fury Bowser to come along, and I jumped into the Giga Bell, and I beat him, and then it just put me right back into the game. And then immediately, Fury Bowser came back, and I had to beat him again, which actually ended up being the final boss battle, and that's because I just never fought him in that like 40-ish cat shine area. I just kept grabbing a cat shine and he'd go away. I never jumped in the Giga Bell.
Oh, so you actually had one more fight before the official last fight.
Yes.
Oh, I gotcha.
It's kind of weird.
To recap, I really think that Bowser's Fury was a great game, and 3D World was a great game too. And I'm really glad that I got to experience 3D World without having played it on the Wii U. The Switch has been so good about porting Wii U games, and there's so many of those games are some of the best games on Switch. The Wii U really had an awesome library of games. And because it underperformed, a lot of people didn't get to experience them. So I'm really glad that Nintendo is bringing those games to Switch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on brand for the Switch, I think 3D World plus Bowser's Fury is great for a variety of ages and types of gamers. I mean, I've recommended it to a friend as a Christmas gift for her young son just this year.
Yeah, it's great for kids, but it's also, you know, we're adults and we're more serious gamers, and we loved it too.
Yep.
But we want to know what you think about Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury. Is this the first time you had played Mario 3D World? Was it your second time? And did you enjoy Bowser's Fury?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd also love to know, how long do you think it's going to be before we get into 3D Mario?
I hope it's not very long, personally.
Me too.
All right, until next time, guys, I'm Randy.
And I'm Daniel.
And this has been Gaming Gig.
Peace out.